everyone, welcome to a new video that me and my husband have been talking about doing. I started to do one and I didn't really care for it, so I figured I'd bring my husband along with it. So he's just wiping down his glasses, so just want to warn you, this might be a little long because we're kind of long-winded, but so we're basically going to take pieces of media from video games to movies, TV shows, or what have you, and we're basically going to discuss things about it, our opinions of it, along with actually break things down, because we're nerdy people like that. So the first one we kind of wanted to do was a video game that we've basically been loving since we first found it, and that is Borderlands. Borderlands is one of the original loot and shoot games.
It is the original loot and shoot game. It's like the granddaddy of them all.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about loot and shoot, and you're doing stuff like Destiny or Anthem, which is a really bad example. I'm trying to honestly think, because I can't think of many loot and shoot games. I know there's a few of them out there, but for the life of me, I know Destiny is one of the biggest ones that a lot of people still play. But I mean, like, I guess technically, if you're thinking about loot and shoots, you can consider Dead Island a really early one. Because, I mean, if you play Dead Island, you find guns and you loot chests all across the friggin' multiverse with that one. That's a fun game in and of itself. But when you're talking about shooting and an RPG element and stuff like that, yeah, I gotta say that Borderlands made the loot and shoot genre as good as it was and as good as it's ever gonna get. And each year that they come out with each time that they come out with a subsequent version of the game, they always add little bits and pieces here and there to make and involve the gameplay. So,
it's always getting updated in some way, shape, or form. So if you are not in the sphere of Gearbox's Borderlands, the games, there's actually 5 different games. The first one that most people have heard about is the titular Borderlands, which is about a planet called Pandora where bandits, thieves, and just all-around bad people live. But supposedly on this planet there are things called vaults, where untold riches, unbelievable weaponry, and power can be found inside. Fortunately, they're also guarded by these creatures called the Vault Monster. And you play one of 4 characters from 4 different styles of fighting to go and find the vault. Then there is Borderlands Pre-Sequel technically comes next because it comes between 1 and 2 and then a little bit after 2.
And Pre-Sequel and 2, I think right now are the most prominent in all the Borderlands because they're the ones that are most talked about. Borderlands 1 isn't as well talked about because of quote-unquote lack of plot or a really good plot to some people, either way. But you have the Handsome Jack collection, which is Pre-Sequel and 2, which introduces the most aggravating villain in all of Borderlands. That is until you get to either 3 or Tales of the Borderlands.
Basically, the reason that 1, Pre-Sequel, and 2 are the most prominent is because they were out for the longest. And then Telltale took their lead and created Tales from the Borderlands, which is a episodic, story-based game. It doesn't have any of the loot and shoot that normal Borderlands does. But then, like was it last year that Borderlands 3 came out? I think it was last year. Yeah.
Technically it was last year, but it was like late last year. I think it came out like November.
Yeah, late 2019. Borderlands 3 came out to massive fanfare. Everybody was waiting for Borderlands 3 to come out. And it's phenomenal. Like, it had some bugs, like most AAA games nowadays, but it did answer a lot of questions. It has a lot of Easter eggs for previous Borderlands games, and that's what's kind of fun about Borderlands, is that each one does not forget about previous characters. It may take a while to actually get answers for what happens, but it does continue to talk about it and talk about each of the characters and what they're doing. But the main ones that are talked about are actually the ones from the first game. So with the characters, you have Lilith the Siren, because sirens are super important in the Borderlands world.
Well, more so later than the first one.
Yeah, in the first one, you only know of Lilith, and then you know of Commandant Steele.
Which, unfortunately, because Commandant Steele doesn't apply any powers during her brief appearance,
you don't see
unfortunately, you don't see her even being a siren until you play a few times and you play the other ones and realize, oh, she has markings like a siren. Oh. Oh.
Then you have Roland, who is the soldier. He is a former Crimson Lance soldier. Crimson Lance works under Commandant Steele for the Atlas Corporation. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but there are companies that are predominantly shown, and then there are smaller companies that you do get like weaponry for, but the three big ones are Atlas, Dull, and Hyperion.
Then Jacobs.
Well, Jacobs isn't really all that prominent, except if you're looking at the weaponry.
Torg's pretty big.
Well, Torg is bigger when it's like in Borderlands Pre-Sequel and 2, because he's actually featured.
Well, Torg's actually also in Borderlands 1. It's I think they only make explosive weapons in 1. They don't really make anything else.
Yeah, but you never actually see Torg, and unless you're actually paying attention to getting Torg weapons, then you don't even realize that that's a thing. But the three big ones are Atlas, Dull, and Hyperion. And the one that you primarily see, in Borderlands 1 at least, is Atlas. And they're a bunch of assholes.
Hyperion will replace through the new stations and, of course, the Claptrap units, the CL4PTP Stewart bots that you come across all across the Borderlands. And I mean all across. Those motherfuckers are like flies.
And Dull, all of the bandits that you end up fighting, all of the main human bad guys that you meet, they are all former Dull workers that were mining Pandora prior to the end of it was a 7-year winter, and all the wildlife came back out to play. And they were not expecting that. Because Pandora is filled with, the base creature that you end up fighting is called a skag, which reminds me a little bit of Predator. With their mouth that opens up.
Well, yeah, with the way that the mouth opens up, it looks like a predator from the movie Predator.
But it acts like a dog.
It's a dog / wolf /
what have you.
Whatever it is.
But, anyway, the next character that you end up being is Mordecai, which is actually his favorite. Mordecai is a hunter class. He has a bird that he uses to fight with, and his name is Bloodwing. I haven't personally played as him. I've only played as Lilith the Siren and the other character that I'm going to mention. And getting pop-ups.
My favorite is Mordecai because if you've ever thrown a grenade and missed, Bloodwing is a self-homing grenade. You toss it, it finds a bad guy, it kills it. You can't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah. And then the fourth one doesn't really have a whole lot backstory-wise, but his name is Brick, and he is a beef stick.
That hunk of meat in the back that can grind ribs on his ribs.
Yeah. Basically, when he is introduced, they always say it's like Lilith the Siren, Roland the Soldier, Mordecai the Hunter. He just says Brick as himself.
Brick Shithouse.
He's a brick shithouse. And that's the one that I've primarily played as, just because his action skill, which is basically he punches you really hard, is absolutely hilarious. Lilith's phase walking ability is fun when you're trying to get out of a jam, but just recently I decided to actually go through all of the games and play with a Siren-esque character. Can't really do that for all of them, but I'm trying. And I just recently beat Borderlands 1 with Lilith. And in Borderlands 2, the Siren that you deal with is different, but they do have similar abilities where they can get auras when they kill people. And I became a phoenix. So that was quite entertaining. That actually killed a vast majority of people while I was fighting.
Each and every fighting style, or play style, I should say, for each character depends upon what you want out of it. Each skill tree that each character has essentially has a favorite weapon or a favorite play type. Example, the Hunter has a skill tree dedicated to sniper rifles, where I believe the Commando or the Soldier has a love for combat rifles. And I believe actually Mordecai also likes pistols too, repeaters. Lilith loves SMGs, and Brick likes anything that explodes. And those are just prominently in their skill trees in at least one of them. But then you have stuff that enhances their action skills, and then each of them have different skills, kill skills that activate when they kill someone. So really, depending on how you play and like to play, if you like to get up at everyone's face, probably use Brick. If you want to stay far away, probably stick with the Soldier or the Hunter. You can play this game and build the characters however you want, and the killing's all the same. But how you use it is different. I'll give you an example. My wife, who is playing as Lilith, uses her kind of strange. For me. Well, for me. Because I played as Lilith, and I like her. She's not my favorite, but I like her. And the way I would build her up is I would cause her to use her elemental status however she could. There's a skill called Spark that, raises the percentage of how effective your elemental weapons are. And like she said, her Phoenix ability. Well, if you go ahead and, once you start lighting yourself on fire, which is a kill skill, all you gotta do is just run into the middle of the fray shooting stuff, and because they're close by you, or you just run by them, they just light up on fire. So if you just run by them and still try to shoot them, you do much more damage. She decides to light herself on fire and then just run about and shoot. Well, it was a little strange for me, but it still worked for her. She kicked ass, so I can't complain.
Yeah, and the thing is with this game, you do fight a kind of a menage of different characters. So, of course, there are characters that are going to be immune to whatever element you're using, or resistant to whatever element you're using. So, for me, when I had problems, because I was mostly going with the fire, I wanted to go with corrosive, because I knew that dealing with the Crimson Lance, they are all armor-based, and the best way to take them down is to use corrosive damage. Unfortunately, I wasn't finding a lot of things corrosive, so I spent my time being a firefly. And what happened was, when I got to a particular DLC that deals with completely Crimson Lance, I'm like, okay, I know that there's going to be fire ones, which is the pyros, so I need to have other things that can do damage. But my fire still hit them, it just did less damage than it did to everyone else. So that's primarily why I did it, because I wanted multiple ways to kill people. I mean, that's the main thing. Did you want to go through each of the skill trees?
Did you want to talk more about the plot first, or do you want to do more about the skill tree?
Let's talk about the plot more since we're on this subject.
Okay.
Basically, like I said at the top of this, the main plot of it is to open up the vault. And Nick did mention that the first one is not exactly known for its big overarching plot, because it is the first one and a lot of the stuff needs to be just set up. So when I was going through it, I was definitely looking at it from a writer's perspective and looking for the story. And I felt that I was just kind of getting tugged around over here, over there, over yonder, with no real rhyme or reason. And, like, if you do only the story-based ones where it's going to progress you to the vault, yeah, there is kind of a plot. It's very thin. Basically, you arrive in the town of Firestone, and you have to save the people of Firestone, protect them from the various bad guys, and then you move on to, I'm trying to remember what town it is after that. New Haven. New Haven was the next one after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then New Haven was basically where you spent the second half of the game. But for the most part, the most exciting part was just getting to the bad guys. Otherwise, there wasn't really that much plot. Now, the DLCs, they did have some semblance of a plot. Not much. I will say that General Knox, the Secret Armor of General Knox, I think, had more plot to it.
So, the big plot the main plot about the game is, rinse and repeat, the opening of the vault. Marcus kind of explains it is that, these 4 original Vault Hunters came looking for the vault on Pandora. They all must have gotten a tip-off somewhere that starting off at Firestone was the key. So they all arrive on Pandora looking for the vault, and that leads them to, going all over Pandora, gaining experience, learning the land, taking out the bandits who could get in their way. So it's like, well, if you want the vault piece, you might have to take out 9 toes to clear up this land here, and we'll give you, a way to find your way to what you're looking for. And of course, you have Angel. More about her later. But she essentially tells you, you have to do this, you have to do that. This is how you have to do this, so you will get more experience to be better, and you'll be ready for what's to come.
Yeah, basically the whole thing is collecting the broken pieces of the vault key that have been held by a woman named Patricia Tanis. And honestly, when I first started my solo playthrough of Borderlands, I already did not really have that high of an opinion of Tanis, and after playing, I still don't have a really high opinion of Tanis, because I find her to be just an absolute garbage human, but I do feel bad for her because of some of the things that happens to her. I still think that she's a garbage human.
She starts sounding kind of like not a very compassionate person, but I feel bad for her because, well, her entire research team is wiped out the first year on Pandora.
Yeah.
Awful.
And, the year lasts, 900 days or something like that?
Good fuck.
Yeah, it's, long. But, the reason that I feel that she's a garbage human is during one of the echoes, which is, a recordings for the people of Pandora to leave, is that one of the last people of her research team is this woman named Marjorie, I think it is. And she's like... I think it may have been Cherise.
I don't know.
But she's basically lying there dying, and she just feels new sympathy for this woman that has literally spent almost 900 days with her, and she's dying right there in front of her. Or when one of her other colleagues died, she said it's I can't help but feel elated. His chair was always more comfortable than mine. And I'm like, do you have an emotion in your body other than science?
So, fun fact about Pandora. Pandora actually has natural gases in it that actually could affect the brain. Natural residents of Pandora, like Moxie, Mad Moxie, who you meet, Dr. Ned,
No.
and a couple of others, they are immune to this. But people who have been dropped there, like the murderers and criminals, the psychos, shit like that,
People from
they
Doll,
aren't.
people from Atlas.
People who came there, who are not immune to it, ended up being warped by the gas. So Patricia, who may not have started out so bad, only got that way and became a psychotic paranoid, essentially only because of the gases on Pandora. Pandora's a really interesting place. It's really has its own... Huh?
It's barren.
Well, yeah, but... it has its own... I'm trying to think of the word for it. It's...
Charm?
Sure. It has its own charm in it because essentially what you're dealing with is you're dealing with a place that for some reason you're not affected by it. Although that does raise the question, were you once, were you there along? Because, I mean, if these four were brought up in Pandora somewhere, which I guess would make sense since Roland became a Crimson Lance, but you don't really get a sense of that they became crazy unless Brick became that way over time, but that's another story.
That's why I say that Borderlands 1 has probably the weakest story, because we get zero really backstory except for Roland. Roland is the only one who actually legitimately has a backstory.
Well, the rest of the backstory is that, like I said, Marcus kind of tells it to you, these four were just itching and raring to go to become Vault Hunters. That's the backstory for them all, is that they all had one goal in mind. They were kids who wanted to become Vault Hunters.
Yeah.
But as far as what else they were doing, yeah, the only thing you really get out of it, is, like she said, is that Roland's a hunter. But there's really nothing else connected to them. I'm sorry. Soldier. Roland's a soldier. You get nothing else really out of it, which is fine.
I just wish we would have gotten more about Mordecai and Brick. Like, little spoiler for future games, but Lilith becomes super, 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 super important throughout the entire Borderlands series, minus Tales from the Borderlands. And I wish we could have known any information about her prior to the start of Borderlands 1. Like, we knew at least where Roland came from. We had no idea where she came from. We had no idea about where Mordecai came from or where Brick came from. We at least had that much from Roland. So that was my whole thing, because I don't know if Gearbox, the company that made Borderlands, was thinking that far ahead. Like, I think they may have had some idea, but I don't know if they necessarily had the overarching plot that is now proceeding through Pre-Sequel 2 and 3, and Tales from the Borderlands in a small capacity. Because it seems like there's such a big shift between how the games are presented between 1 and then the rest of the series. Like, am I crazy with that one, or... does it...
Well, no, because, I mean, here's what you got. You got the first game, which, who knows, maybe they weren't planning that far ahead, because you know how games go. I mean, I'll give you a really good example, really.
He's got to think about it.
I do.
It's such a good example, he needs to think about it.
Let's go with Marvel's Spider-Man. Actually, no, let's go with Batman, even better yet.
Yeah.
Batman in the history of video games is as bad as Superman is.
Except Superman has yet to have a good game.
Actually, I digress. If you like beat-em-ups, the Death and Return of Superman for the Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo, really good games. And that's the only good Superman game I can attest for. But the history of Batman games, not all of them have been good. And if you like some of the earlier games, cool.
Awesome.
We have Batman Arkham Asylum. Batman Arkham Asylum, switching gears for a minute, Batman Arkham Asylum, if you haven't played it yet, is
Phenomenal.
what it feels like to be Batman. If you do not think like Batman, you're fucked. Like, straight up. Because if you go in head first into every situation, you just end up as a red smear on the ground, unless you're really good at comboing and button mashing. But even then, that doesn't completely save you. Either way, when you have a game like Batman, now, I will say it's kind of dull. Arkham Asylum is kind of dull in some ways, but it kind of keeps you at the edge of your seat. This game could have gone south really, really quick.
Yeah. And it was also a landmark game the very same way that Borderlands was, because it was so good that imitators started coming out of the woodwork. And now we have games that are literally like Arkham Asylum clones, just like there are Borderlands clones. So, yeah, I would say that maybe Batman was another good example of that, where, like, the first game, maybe it wasn't fantastic. I personally like Asylum better than the subsequent ones, but that's because the pacing of it makes sense. That's a completely different subject.
And you don't really get the sense of, like, what exactly you're in for. And it's kind of lame, because while some of the really good detective work and neat stuff you could do in Asylum, it's kind of lame because you get into Arkham, what do you expect them to fight? Well, in the beginning of the game, you're taking in the Joker, so you know already that he's going to be the main bad guy. But then, you come across Harley Quinn, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be coming across her at some point. What's really disappointing is that, while you face Bane at one point, and you face
Poison
Ivy, and you kind of face Croc, there's no sense of it being really interesting as a fight. Especially since, like, most of the fights end up becoming these Goliaths that you end up fighting, essentially these Titans, that
they all play the same.
They all play the same way, and once you beat one, you could essentially beat them all if you can button mash your way through a group of people. And by that alone, there are some people that I've talked to that's like, you know what, if it wasn't for the fact I enjoyed most of the gameplay, I probably wouldn't have liked it at all. Because the boss battles in a game like that make the entire game.
That's
just
kind of how I felt about Borderlands.
See, Borderlands, while it's a shooter, and you're like, well, you shoot all the bad guys. Yeah, but if you've played Borderlands,
it gets very old.
So,
okay?
What I was going to say is that while, yes, you have to shoot them, we'll give you an example and we'll build up to it.
Okay.
First one you take on is Ninetoes. Ninetoes is a psycho with 2 pet skags. That's all he is. There's nothing special about him. He's your quintessential, I'm a boss, you guys are bullshit. That's his whole thing.
Yep.
The only other thing next to him is Bonehead. Yeah. He's the next one you fight. Again, just a punk with some goons. But then you get Sledge. He is a little more challenging when you get to him. Because now you're facing a bigger boss. He has the first vault piece. And he does have a shield. Now, if you're playing by yourself,
you have to build up to it.
You definitely have to make sure you're ready for this. Because Angel will let you know, it's a brute with a powerful shield. And depending on what kind of weapons you have at this point, she's right. Now, if you haven't figured it out by this point, headshots are crucial. So if you can get headshots on him, it actually does the most damage. But that's breaking through his shield first, and it regenerates fast. So without the constant attack, you're going to get walloped. Not to mention that because you have so many other bad guys around you, you really have to dodge and move a lot. If you're not good at dodging, moving, and shooting at this point, I suggest backing up and continuing later, somewhere else.
I'm trying to find a list of Borderlands villains.
Just go to the Borderlands wiki.
I did, but it didn't... There we go. Now it gives me what I'm looking for, because, like, the first thing that came up was Wilhelm. I'm like, that's... Yes, he's a villain, but he's not what I'm looking for.
He's a villain, but he's not a villain. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah, so Nine Toes, Pinky and Digit, Bonehead, then, of course, the Roid Rage Psycho.
Oh, yeah, the
Sledge.
Roid Rage Psycho. He's the first time you come... He's what you come across as a badass psycho. But this sucker is relentless. And he's not that hard in comparison, but he's still a pain in the ass. And because he's a bullet sponge.
He's such a bullet sponge. Oh my god.
And if you're not aiming in the right places, he's even more difficult.
The worst part is that he has the same kind of AI that the regular psychos do, which is, unlike the ones with guns, like the raiders and the bandits, they stay back and take pot shots at you. The psychos and the badass psycho will actually run up to you and start slashing at you relentlessly. So even when you're downed, they'll still slash at you.
So you need to back up and shoot at the same time, which is kind of tough because you have little psycho midgets running around.
I hate those things so much.
Then you have...
Mad Mel.
Oh, okay, so Mad Mel is a little bit different in a fight because now you're using the vehicles. Now, when you get to use the vehicles in here, they're okay.
They definitely take some getting used to, but they are, at least in my opinion, because I've only played a few racing games, they actually work much better than a lot of other games.
Yeah. I have a recommendation for people out there that are playing this game. If you play this game and you get to this section and you're like, well, I'm just going to use a car in there, you can. However, I will recommend this. Sit there at the edge of where he is and shoot with a sniper rifle or other guns. Because if your car gets blown up, you will more likely die. His health respawns to full, and you do all that work for nothing. The fight keeps respawning and refilling, and it's a pain. And that actually goes for every single boss that you go up against. When you die, no matter how much health you've taken away from him, they refill.
I will kind of interrupt with one thing, because I had two different instances of this. One was Sledge, actually. Because the respawn point is so close to him, the only thing that refilled on him was his shield. It wasn't his health. His health stayed the same from what I left it. Now, when I faced against Mad Mel, that was the opposite. His health regained, and I actually kind of... I backed him into a corner, because Mad Mel's entire level is... It's a round dirt track. He appears in the middle, and then he starts bombing you with his little friends in their cars. I think I did like 8 retries, and I finally decided, like, you know what? F this. And I literally rammed into him and caused our cars to sit like this, with our front tires literally inches from each other. He could not move. I could not move. So I literally just hopped out of the car and I started shooting at him with a rocket launcher, and I finally killed him. I'm like, I know this was cheating, but I don't care. I beat him.
So, like I said, so far with each fight, yeah, they're all shootering, but you have to be strategic in how you fight each one. It makes the difference in each fight. It really does. And Jessie has seen me play Borderlands 2 and 1 and watched the way I fight sometimes, and she tries to give me tips, and that's a different story.
I just looked at the next one, and it's Crom. Oh my god!
It's an interesting fight in and of itself, because what it does is it brings you to this arena where you're on a bunch of platforms and bridges. Not only are you at Crom's mercy with his minigun, but then you're fighting off a horde of psychos and bandits as you're going. And then you have to build up to him and then kill him. So, you have to dodge out of the way of all his minigun shots, plus getting through all the psychos and stuff, then getting up to him and then putting a couple bullets in him. He's not that tough physically, but he still will take a bit if you don't have a good enough gun on it, so it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, then there's a couple of smaller mini bosses that are mission based, such as Janice Cobb and Taylor Cobb. But then there is one that when me and him first played on the Xbox, Xbox 360, he told me that this was coming, and I'm like, what the hell is a rack hive? Now, racks are these bird-like creatures that dive bomb you. And the one good thing is, at least in Borderlands, they'll dive bomb you, they'll circle back around, and they will head through the same area. The problem is that they do come in hordes. Now, I'm like, okay, what the hell is a rack hive? I'm thinking like a beehive. No, this thing is a literal animal where racks come out of his mouth. We call him vagina face, by the way, because that's what it looks like. But this thing is a big, lumbering beast, and it is massive damage if it steps on you.
You're talking about, like, you know, an elephant or a rhino running towards you type thing. It's way bigger than that, though. It's about 10 stories tall.
Yeah, and it, of course, shoots out racks, which you then have to deal with as well in the fight. So all of that is leading up to one of the next biggest bad guys, which is Baron Flint. Now, Baron Flint has two badass brutes. Now, brutes are bigger versions of, like, the raiders. These things are massive. The badass brutes are worse. Now, Baron Flint has two of these named Hans and Franz. I got surprised by those. I completely forgot that they were there. I knew I was going up against Baron Flint, but I yelled at him. I'm like, you forgot to mention Hans and Franz. He's like, oh.
I just forgot. I guess because, you know, we just took them out, so I didn't really think about it. But besides Hans and Franz, you have the Cobb brothers, who are, you know, mission-based bosses, and it's a side mission-based boss at that. Oh, then you have Master Mcloud. He's comes in when you're in the Crimson Fastness. He's like one of the last people you come across before entering the final boss area. And he's
I don't remember him, really.
What? Really?
I think because I, like, sped through the ending because I just wanted to be done with, like, the main campaign.
It's the first time you get an Iridium weapon in the game. Somewhat. You end up getting, like, the Iridium cannon, usually, which just acts like a rocket launcher with Iridium powered up.
Yeah.
And then you have the Vault Monster afterwards.
So,
and the Vault Monster is, when you're talking about, like, a shooter, you know, you're thinking at this point, you know, you faced all mostly human enemies. This thing is an Elder God.
Yeah, this thing, little back history. This is what killed the race that originally lived on Pandora, the Iridians. Now, the Iridians were the ones who created the vaults. And they created the vaults, and they put these creatures, these vault monsters, to protect them.
As well as Guardians.
As well as Guardians. The problem is, the one that they have for this one literally killed them. This is called the Destroyer. It comes out, it is a mass of tentacles and teeth, and just not goodness.
It's Mega Vagina Face.
It is Mega Vagina Face. And oh my god, he literally warned me as we were, because it's a big lead up to this section. And he warned me, it's like, okay, stand behind the pillars and aim for the purple blobs on the tentacles. I'm like, tentacles? What? So this thing comes bursting out of the vault. Shut up. Kills Commandant Steele. And then we proceed to have to fight it. All the while, Angel is telling us that it's like, in this creature's world, he is invincible. But in our world, he can be killed. So we just have to hope and pray we can kill him at that point.
So the secret to the fight is that you're shooting at it and you're doing very little damage. What actually does the most damage is you have to shoot the purple orbs that come from the tentacles, because that's what gives it its power. It's just such it's a really kind of it's a really big thing. It's kind of crazy. You have a bunch of other smaller bosses in Borderlands, not really super worth mentioning.
Yeah.
But then the DLCs, you have 4 of them. I'm sorry, in the DLCs there are 4 DLCs, but 3 of them which contain a plot.
Yeah, and I mentioned one earlier, which is the Secret Armory of General Knox.
Yeah. Canonically, there is the Zombie Island of Dr. Ned first. If you've watched any old school zombie movies, or zombie movies in general, I am not kidding you, this is the ultimate zombie game type thing. You have the wacky scientist, you have all the really creepy aspects of it. There's werewolves, there's a vampire at one point, I believe.
Is there?
I don't know.
I didn't see one.
Sounded like a good thing. Anyway, but you get into the town of Jacob's Cove, and
you're literally from point 1, you are inundated with zombies. And
they don't even break out the loop for this. The minute you get down the hill, you're literally like in Zombie Central, and they are at your level, unless you enter early enough, in which case they are not at your level. Or if you enter in after the game, I believe they do not match your level after that.
Basically, each one of them has a kind of a level cap that they start off on. If I remember correctly, Jacob's Cove starts at 15.
Mm-hmm.
With Claptrap Revolution, which is the next DLC.
No, next one's Knox.
Is it Knox?
Yeah.
Okay.
You played it out of order.
Yeah. The Secret Armory of General Knox, it tends to start between 25 and 30 because the Crimson Lance is much harder. And then Claptrap's new Robot Revolution, which is in that, I think, 30 range.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked Jacob's Cove for the concept, but I will say that there is one very, very large downside to it, and that is the set of missions called Brains. This one you get from a little side character named TK. TK is featured in the original game. He's a very small kind of friend that you meet. But in this one, he is undead TK, because, spoiler warning, he dies in Borderlands 1. And in this one, he's undead, so he requires brains. And I forgot this, but every time you actually complete one of the brains missions, he spits out a weapon.
Yeah.
So I missed that completely, all the way until the last one. So I just, yeeted. But basically what you have to do is you have to collect a succession of zombie brains, and the only way you can get them is by doing headshots. And Nick got so annoyed with me because I did this. Basically, I would go into an area that was infested with zombies, kill every single one of them, and then collect up the brains. So there'd literally just be a field of little green spires of light showing me where the zombie brains were. He got so, anxiously annoyed at me because I was doing this so often. But I felt it was useful. But the problem is that this mission is, no joke, irritating. Because you start off, get 10 brains. It's like, okay. Then get 25 brains. Like, alright. Get 50 brains. Get 100 brains. Get 150 brains. And then the last one is get 250 brains.
The noises she was making and annoying.
Because here's the problem. If you spend a short amount of time in a particular area and you kill all the zombies, and then you leave, kill all the zombies in that area, there's no guarantee that you spent enough time in that second area for the first area to respawn. So the
You
easy...
literally have to go through every single section of the game,
multiple times.
Of that land, just to get it, and it's a pain in the ass.
The best way, though, is to actually get it early on, because then you can start building it early. I couldn't find him at first, so by the time I got to him, I'd already finished like half of the DLC, so I had some time to make up. But then you move on to the Secret Armory of General Knox. This one is probably the one that most people know about, because in it, at the end of the level, you obviously get the Secret Armory of General Knox. General Knox is the first and only general of the Crimson Lance for Atlas. And this place has, no joke, probably like, 100 chests that you can go through?
There's literally 100 or so chests plus.
Yeah.
If you manage to go into the armory and then exploit the...
Yeah, we'll talk about the glitch when we get to that part.
Then you can just raid the entire place blind.
Yeah. So basically, when you start off, you are in T-Bone Junction. And there you meet up with some familiar faces, Scooter, Moxie, Marcus.
And then you get to meet Athena, and you get to fight her crew of assassins hired by Knox.
Mm-hmm.
She is a Atlas employee at the assassin variety, really kick-ass.
Mm-hmm.
When I tell you that it is the most irritating DLC, it's not because of the missions. And it's not even because of the driving.
It's the relentless pace.
You are, wherever you go in here, you are bombarded with Atlas. And because, like she mentioned earlier, Atlas are armored, if you do not have a weapon to take these suckers down, you are going to just be soaking bullets into these son of a guns without a proper headshot, or without a proper shot to the tanks that some of them carry. It's a brutal barrage. Then when you get out into the desert areas, then you're up against skyscrapers and drifters.
Oh.
You're talking about daddy long legs of the killer variety. That stuff. And then at the end of it all, after everything's said and done, if you really want to die, you go up against Crawmax. This DLC has the most deadly boss in it that you must complete the game entirely before you even remotely stand a chance.
The worst part is that most of this, you can level up and beat it. Like he was saying, I did one of the DLCs out of order so that I would be prepared for the Crimson Lance.
To be fair, she literally played the Claptrap Revolution, which is the last one, and that's an easier DLC in comparison, because all you're going up against is claptraps and bandits, and everything dies in a couple of bullets. The Crimson Lance are made of armor plating. Yeah.
But even with doing that and getting pretty close to the max level that you can do, you cannot out-level Crawmax. He will always be 5 levels higher than you.
3.
No, his minions start off at 3 levels higher. And he has 3 sets of minions. One is 3 levels higher, one is 2 levels higher, then one is 1 level higher. But Crawmax is always 5 levels higher than you, no matter what level you are. And he is unfucking relenting. Like, oh my god. Like, the entirety of Secret Armory is unrelenting pace, because when me and him constantly play, because we end up going into it in order. So we get up to the first tollway, and there is an entire bridgeway that we have to go through before we can get to where our objective is. It is literally a conveyor belt of us going in there, shooting them, they kill us, we get respawned, we run back, and we do it all over again. It's literally a conveyor belt of us just doing this over and over and over again.
If
anyone has seen Team 4 Star, there's a scene in, I think, the Return of Cooler, where Vegeta keeps coming after Cooler, and it's literally that kind of thing. It's like, element of surprise! It's like, he's quite persistent. You have no idea. That is literally what we are doing.
And then what me and Jesse end up running in comes next and goes, you want to know what death tastes like? I mean, that's because we just get pissed off. It's like, die! And you go all Rambo on the section, and we're like, ah! And then you like clips and shit. It's ridiculous. Anyway,
yeah, but by
the time you get to Knox in the DLC,
you're beefy.
Well, you're beefy, yeah, but okay. In Knox, you go up against robots called Devastators. These things are bullet sponges on crack. If you do not have the proper material, you're not outlasting these fights. They literally will at least empty out 2 of your guns if you're not careful. They do take headshots. If you can find the head, it's kind of disguised amongst all the different dark coloring in it. It's fine.
It's actually much lower than what you think it would be.
Yeah.
So you.
And Knox, unfortunately, is
a Devastator.
A Devastator. He's a bullet sponge. The bad part about it is that fight, there's medics. So if you at least have another person with you, they essentially take care of the small guys, and you take the big dude on. It's as easy as that.
But really. Because I was doing it solo, Knox re-got his health twice. I literally went through an entire gun, plus I kept switching around to other ones because I couldn't use certain guns against him. And I'm like, please die. Because I did the Claptrap Revolution first, I didn't have as much trouble as when me and him did it together. Because I was almost 10 levels higher than everything. Like, legitly, I was wrecking frickin' house.
And then she found that she can use a sniper rifle as a good girl.
Shut up. Yeah, I did find that there was a sniper rifle, because normally my go-to weapon is anything automatic. He tends to lean more towards pistols. Why? I don't know.
I've told you why.
I still don't understand it completely.
For me, pistols are single shot. They usually have the best stability because they either fire in bursts, and the automatic pistols that do fire automatic do not have a great kickback. So for me, they put out some decent power for most of them. My second favorite thing is a shotgun, because when you just need to blast something's head off.
Yeah.
I go all around for great weapons, but for me, pistols are the one thing I sync with, because, I mean, they're really simple, they have great ammo capacity, and they get the job done.
Yeah, pistols and revolvers. I tend to lean more towards SMGs, which is submachine gun, and assault rifles. But with this one, because I was trying to cycle through some of my weapons, I had basically been holding on to an assault rifle since before Jacob's Cove. So, like, through 2 DLCs, I had basically been wrecking house with a single gun. Which is why it sits at a level 22 proficiency.
When in Borderlands, you actually get to increase your damage and everything about your gun
the more you use it.
So, if my pistol level was at level 30.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we even reached the end of the game area. Which, speaking of which, the next DLC is Claptrap Revolution. The small thing is that one of them decided to reprogram itself as a assassin and cause a revolution, because Claptraps are like
they're
literally the minions of the Pixar world, of the Borderlands world. Same yellow, same annoying habits, whatever.
Oh god,
but
everyone hates them.
Claptraps are bumbling. Everything pisses all over a Claptrap. Everything. So they were like, nope. Guess what we're not doing? You, bro. And that's essentially what it's like. The Claptrap Revolution is one of the easiest DLCs. The only thing hard about it is the relentless nature of some of the levels, because some of the areas you're going to are either really big, takes forever to get through them, whatever. And some of the missions are just flat annoying.
Yeah. There's one thing that you have to do for Tanis. Again, she shows up. This one honestly made my hatred for her even more, because one of the things you have to do for her is, you, much like the Jacob's Cove, you have to collect Claptrap components in the same way that you did Brains.
Which isn't as long, but it's just as annoying.
And because, like, the unrelenting nature he talked about, there's a section in it called the Hyperion Dump, where there is 2 sections where you can get a large amount of claptraps to come after you. But they are unrelenting. Literally, you can stand there in front of their, like, spawn point, and they will just keep coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. It's like...
You stand at one point inside of that junkyard, you'll be surrounded with claptraps. Now, it's even kind of funny because, you know, when you know Claptrap by this point, even the dialogue for the evil Claptrap sounds funny.
I personally found it very annoying after, like, the first couple times that I had to deal with it.
So, Claptrap uses a cluck trap at one point, which is literally a chicken claptrap, which Jesse made fried chicken out of that son of a bitch really quick. You go up against Knox, Commandant Steele, and Ned.
Yeah.
As claptrap units.
So they call them Knox Trap, Ned Trap, and Steel Trap.
And then at the end, you'll go up against Mega Interplanetary Ninja Assassin Claptrap. Inac, or Minac.
Which is a gigantic tank.
And then once you go through this son of a bitch, after some planning and thought, because that is a thing that needs to happen, you go ahead and you take on the Claptrap itself, which is a little annoying, but
it's easy.
It's easier. Then afterwards, you're rewarded with yet another little praise of chests, due to the courtesy of Blake?
Yeah, Mr. Blake.
Mr. Blake from Hyperion. So that, we have just told you essentially the entire plot of the first Borderlands.
There is one thing I do want to bring up back to Knox. We mentioned it earlier that there is a glitch. After you defeat Knox, you get to raid his armory. Now, the normal game progression is that you only get 3 minutes. But Gearbox and some very smart players, in the original one, they found a way to get in to the armory without setting off the 3-minute timer. Now, when they did the remastered version for the Game of the Year edition, they did change it a little bit. It's not as easy to get in, but you can still get in, and I did. And basically what you do is there's a section before you get to a set of lockers behind shielded walls. And you go over to the right, you crouch down, wiggle around a little bit, and you will fall through the floor and into the actual armory. And then you basically have carte blanche to go through every single one of the chests, find your types of guns that you want, your rarity level, because each of the guns has a rarity that you can choose from. It goes from white to green to blue to purple to orange, being legendary. And you can go through all of these, find which ones you want, get rid of ones that you don't want. And then you have to actually either kill yourself with a grenade or a rocket launcher, which will then allow you to get back, or you could just quit out the game and it will send you back to your last spawn point. Problem with that one is that if you do that one, you will have to fight Knox again. But if you kill yourself and you get sent back to the start point before the Knox fight, then you only have to fight the minions, or do what I did and just run past. Because it's literally just the medics and the, I'm brain farting, the big machines, the Devastators. Yeah.
So, you know, that's really the whole thing. That's literally a breakdown of the plot. Some of the minor characters, you get Dr. Zed. Zed Moxie and
Scooter.
Marcus and Scooter are constant helps to you for the next couple of games.
Red less in Borderlands Pre-Sequel, and is he in 2?
Yeah, he's in 2. Nina takes over for him in Pre-Sequel, but then again, you're on Elpis, which is a different story entirely.
Yeah, we'll get into that
and
one.
And we will, another video, we will talk about another Borderlands. Right now, we're on 1.
So, thank you all for watching. I hope that this has been informative and entertaining.
Do you want to build your skill trees still?
I don't know, do you? I mean, we're at an hour.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. So, we're not actually done. It's always entertaining when you do things off the cusp. Okay, so I started talking about earlier about the skill trees for each of the characters. And as we said, it's based off of what you particularly want to do. Now, with each of the characters, obviously, you get different subsections. So we'll start with Brick. The 3 skill trees that you get is Brawler, Tank, and Blaster. Brawler focuses on melee, especially using the Berserker Fists, which is his action skill. Tank focuses on damage mitigation and recovery. And then Blaster focuses on weapons, primarily explosive weapons, which tend to be Torg weapons.
So you have right there 3 different ways to kind of build him up. A lot of people I know will make him a very action skill heavy dude, so they'll go for Tank Brawler to dump his points in. Going for Tank first, because if you can build up his tank tree to suck up his points, he gets really nasty and nigh unkillable.
He basically becomes the paint train.
But then from there, it's do you want to cause damage with your weaponry or damage with your fists is what you have to focus on next. If you want to start building up both trees at the same time, go for it. Just make sure you put your points where they count when they count.
So then the next one that we have is Lilith the Siren. She is a controller, so if you are interested in doing like a lot of elemental or a lot of controlling how the battle goes, recommend Lilith. Her 3 is Assassin, Elemental, and Controller. With Controller, it focuses on mitigating damage and dazing enemies.
So you actually get to slow them down and reduce their damage output.
Yeah. Elemental, like he said, focuses on interactions with the tech effects along with the elemental damage that sirens normally do.
So, in Borderlands, you get artifacts that you can attach to your action skill to give yourself one of the 4 corrosive, incendiary, explosive, or shock effects. Mm-hmm. With this, it makes her much better. Because now you get to utilize the elemental focus guns and your action skill, which already gives you access to more elemental purview, which is just amazing. So if you utilize her right, she becomes really amazing in doing it. And then Assassin focuses on doing damage, especially with phase walk and melee attacks. So if you combine Elemental and Assassin, you get a sucker punch of just gnarly phase walking. It's really good.
Then with Mordecai the Hunter, the 3 classes of skill tree that you get is Sniper, Rogue, and Gunslinger. With Sniper, it focuses on the effectiveness with sniper rifles. So if I was going to follow my now love of sniper rifles, I'd probably end up being Mordecai.
Rogue, it's what it sounds like. He focuses on his Bloodwing more, which is why I love it, because you get to do from dink and a little bit of damage to taking out like 4 or 5 guys, and then when he comes back, he just refills faster. It's relentless, and you get a lot more loot from it.
Yeah.
Gunslinger is my personal favorite one, where I get to do more than everything with my pistols, and I appreciate that one.
And then the last one we have is for Roland. He can be either infantry, support, or medic. Infantry focuses on offensive ability with weapons and Roland's turret, which is his action skill. Basically, he throws down a turret and it creates a shield around him that also helps in battle. Then you have support, which focuses mainly on defense and providing extra ammunition for the party at large.
Which, by the way, it's not a shield, it's actually an aura.
Is it an aura?
Yeah.
Because it looks like a shield.
Well, the thing is that when we usually play with Roland, we have the extra ammunition or the healing on, and so it's just an aura around it.
Ah, okay. And then the last one focuses on medic forces, mainly on health and keeping the party alive. So you have a wide range with Roland. You can either be offensive, defensive, or support.
Or you can be all three if you build them right.
Yeah, you can. None of these you're being pigeonholed into. You can literally pick back and forth. The only problem is that when you start on a particular tree, to get to the higher level ones, you have to kind of progress through it. And you have to fill it up at least 5 per row. So
you could pick and choose points into each skill. You don't have to put 5 into a single skill.
Yeah.
Recommendation, if you're going to play the game, if you're going to play Borderlands 1 or any of the Borderlands, read through each skill tree, decide what you want the final outcome to be, how you want it to be. If you don't like the way or you want to change it later, there are respec stations in the new use. No problem.
Yeah. It does cost money to respec your stats.
Though by that point, it's negotiable.
Yeah, by that point, if you've gotten a lot, then it'll be well worth the price and you'll have more money than you know what to do with. So, is there anything else that you want to talk about with Borderlands 1?
Class mods.
No class mods.
Okay, short thing on class mods.
Oh, God.
Class mods add a second subsection to your character that give you that focus on different aspects of your character. Small things like the Siren has one that's called a nurse mod that's team healing, or plague bearer, or catalyst. Each one, when you play Borderlands 1 or any of the Borderlands games, watch out for class mods, because when you get these, it may seem insignificant at the time, but if you carry a selection on you, you will never be unprepared for anything. And if you are really enjoying that SMG, just wait till you get the Siren's class mod, and then really enjoy the SMG with 44% more damage and everything else.
And the best part is, if you're playing with people who have similar class mods that have, like, overlapping traits, such as a team regeneration, if, like, multiple people have that, it increases it. So it does pay, if you're playing with friends, to talk about the kind of class mods that you have, and it's like, okay, what's going to benefit us as a team?
And if you play as all 4, if you have 4 friends, or if you have 3 friends, and play together, and you each pick the Vault Hunter in each of their own right, you get, like, one that may do better with team damage, one that does better with team healing, one that does, like, team shield capacity, I think, and team cooldown reduction.
Yeah.
Which just becomes a really, like, amazing experience in and of itself, because playing this game with 3 other people is really fun in its own right. Now, if you have really annoying people or they're really bad jerks, screw them, go find more people to play with. I'm good.
Oh, you're good now? Okay, so I thank you all for watching. I know this is a little long, but I think we did a lot of good talking points, and we did a lot of good talking, and I hope that you all have enjoyed our rambling session about Borderlands 1. We are going to try to do all the Borderlands games, and hopefully they will be well received, alright? So, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye!